Judge not, that you be not judged. Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when there is the log in your own eye? You hypocrite. First, take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. There is a saying in French, tout savoir, c'est tout pardonner. To know all is to pardon all. Each soul is a universe apart. We were taught, when hearing confessions in France, this principle: chaque âme pêche avec son péchoir. Each soul sins with its sinnery. That is to say, it has its own field of vision. The campus of the soul is that in which habitually it operates. And when confessing a soul, the confessor has in some way, with delicacy, to enter into that field of vision, to see what that soul is seeing, to hear what that soul is hearing, to know its forma mentis, to know actually where it's coming from. And if that happens, one will see that consequences are what they are. A person's culpability is linked with many things. We are also invited as confessors to try and meet the souls where they're at and to take them from there. The Lord himself gave the principle when he said, do not quench the flax that is yet smouldering, the wick that is half alight still. In other words, if there's anything there at all, one tries to find it. Otherwise, a confessor can do an awful lot of harm. A person who already in confession, and by that fact having responded to grace, is aggressed, is talked down to, will spiritually run a mile, it can be devastating. Soul surgery is extremely delicate and fine. We have before us an immortal soul, and we can ruin a soul by handling it badly and creating a counter-reaction. And so one goes along with the Holy Ghost rather than do our own thing. One ear open unto him and the other to the soul. And there one would not so easily pronounce judgment. Rather, one would stand back in awe at the mystery of an immortal soul, with all eternity before it, and one fraction of that eternity in our hands right now, as we encounter it in the Lord's name. Each soul has the same structure and the same future in eternity. Which way it will go and how it will spend it is another question. But we're all equal by the structure of our soul, immortal and created in the divine image, with free will, before which the Creator himself draws back in awe, because the Creator has abdicated over supreme control, in the sense that he's wanted to have not robots, but people could actually, in a way, control him by refusing his grace. He will not withdraw that supreme gift of free will, and the evil in the world stems essentially from our misuse. We blame God for what we are actually responsible for. And so it is that at the time of the saints feasted on this day, St. John Fisher and St. Thomas More, the grace that was given to England, Our Lady's dowry, was pushed away. The devil, of course, was not absent. He delights in blocking the free flow of sacramental grace, especially in a whole land. And using weak links, essentially initially Henry VIII, he was able to do so. It's not so simple, actually, because Henry VIII did not die a Protestant. He led essentially the English Church into schism, but that was what was going to open the door eventually to the loss of sacramental grace, because the apostolic succession was going to be lost eventually. Under him, however, certain giants, the Carthusians, the first to go, the Bishop of Rochester, who stood out alone, and the Lord Chancellor himself, St. Thomas More, were able to see what was actually in the balance. That going away from the centre of unity could but mean schism and eventual heresy, because they knew also of the ideas coming from the continent that would also become part of the situation, and they were correct. The Carthusians went first, and St. Thomas More looked at them from a hole in the Tower of London, where he was already imprisoned, and said to his daughter Meg, "Look how they go, joyful as brides for the wedding feast." And he probably intuited that he would be fairly soon to go after him, and they did. This great bishop, who was already a saint even before being a martyr, and Thomas More, a layman who had to do the work the bishops as a body were too afraid to do. And that is happening in our time. Many lay people are being raised up by the Spirit of our God, as Elijah was, and are having to do before kings and princes what some bishops will no longer do for them. On the contrary, unfortunately, we have a situation where a bishop is no longer the power of a bishop, because he's controlled by a body of bishops himself. In church history, it was the bishop who was the head of a diocese. Now, in a diocese, quite often, the bishop has to toe the line of the Episcopal Conference. On the level of the Episcopal Conference, nearly every decision is taken. It's actually questionable whether that was the divinely instituted way of the centuries. If a bishop finds himself in a situation where he can't act as a bishop, his power, which are directly from the Lord, are eviscerated. He's, as it were, a castrated head of the local church. It could happen also in an order. An abbot could have to toe the line. We need strong heads. A powerful abbot, a powerful bishop who's able to be sufficiently strong to say what's on his mind and to command, does good, a huge amount of good to a diocese. And we have wonderful examples around where that is the case. The diocese is well led by a powerful bishop who is willing to speak up, guide and proclaim and not be cowed. So this started with the Carthusians, who had that wonderful experience of the Mass of the Holy Ghost when they asked for guidance from on high, because they didn't know which way to answer. And the miracle of Pentecost was repeated. They saw the tongues of fire coming down over the community during the Mass of the Holy Ghost. They were given power to say the right thing and to testify. The Carthusians actually, because there was more than one wave of them that went, in terrible martyrdom. Some had a terrible imprisonment, awful, before dying, and dying often in prison. Then all the rest followed, ending much later in time, as we're starting around 1535, in our local saint here, Oliver Plunkett, whose head, miraculously preserved, is nearby in Drogheda. In 1681, therefore the last of the army at Tyburn. And I was deeply moved reading many of these testimonies, how one martyr would come, for instance, into one of the cells in the Tower of London and, to his delight, find the traces of one of the earlier martyrs before him, including the very simple alcove of prayer he prepared in the cell itself. You could see how he'd done it, and he was trying to use the same hints of prayer that were chiselled into the wall by his predecessor, atrociously martyred. And of course he himself went also via torture and rack to Tyburn. The description of the tortures is given by one who actually managed to escape, Father Gerard, a Jesuit. It was atrocious. And every time I read these accounts again, I am moved. When still in school, I was present at the huge solemn Mass that the Archbishop of Cardiff celebrated with Bishop Mullins and all the clergy, all the people of the diocese, the Archdiocese of Cardiff, in the grounds of Cardiff Castle, which were in the hands of Catholic family, the Bute family, and to be given to Cardiff by that family on certain conditions, including the use of it for Corpus Christi. Well, that was on the 25th of October, 1970. Paul VI, by now St. Paul VI, canonised these 40 martyrs in one go, but of course there were many more. And it was moving. We heard the Holy Father's voice pronouncing, of course in Latin, but it was our local saints, including Sanctum Ioannem Roberts, St. John Roberts, whose picture is there, who was actually taken at the altar. He was at the last gospel, and they bashed the door down and got him, and he was taken to prison and then hanged, drawn and quartered, because it was the punishment of high treason. A terrible, terrible end, but they went like rockets to glory. And 400 years after his death, which was the 10th of December, 1610, we went in 2010 to Tyburn. It was moving. We were on the spot, and so many martyrs suffered atrociously there. And one could feel the power of the Catholic faith, and what it was to know the difference between truth and falsehood, the fullness of light and half-light, the sacramental knife and the shell without the essence, because these martyrs knew it had not carried on. When Elizabeth had started the Elizabethan settlement, and has remained until now, it was with a weak link. It was Bishop Barlow who had compromised himself one reign after the other, had very free ideas. He laid hands upon Matthew Parker, 5 o'clock in the morning in Lambeth Palace, and had to be unravelled by Pope Leo XIII. And it was, with the commission, they analysed all the documents. All the documents indicate that the intention to do what the church was doing was not there. It was to make a Protestant minister. And also the rite was completely defective, which was also recognised by the Anglicans themselves a century later, when they added to the words that they put in there, receive the Holy Ghost. A century later they added for the office, and the office of bishop, what it was, priest and deacon. That wasn't there initially, so they themselves were showing that actually it was deficient. And the whole fact that the theological context was that of torturing these Catholic priests because they talked about the Holy Sacrifice and all that went with it, indicated they had an abhorrence for the priesthood, and therefore the possibility of transmitting it wasn't there, because the intention was totally lacking, and the form as well, and the matter. And so it is that all the structure is perfect, the churches are well looked after, but the essence is not there. The martyrs could see it for what it was. And we know Father Gerard, for instance, celebrated more than once the Holy Sacrifice in the town of London with tortured limbs in secret. So precious was the Holy Sacrifice for them. So we need to be careful. We perhaps are forgetting what we have in our hands and pandering to non-Catholics, giving to understand it's all the same really, is a terrible betrayal of the martyrs. We need to retrieve our roots. Strong bishops, strong witnesses. And a martyr is a witness. And even if it brings unpopularity, like the martyrs, we do not need to care too much about the opinion of other human beings that also one day will have to answer before the same high King